I am here to dare people to believe that they matter, because that was what I have become convinced of in these conversations with people, is that when they have that shadow of doubt, they're really wondering, do I matter? And when you strip it down, until that question, do I believe that I matter? Not that somebody else say I matter, not I'm supposed to matter, but what do I believe about myself? Do I believe that I matter? And until that question is answered in the affirmative, in a rock solid bedrock way, I am convinced that permanent life change cannot and will not happen.
Hey, I'm Megs, and welcome to the Free to Be You podcast. I am an identity and alignment coach who is passionate about helping you move into the second chapter of your life as the freest, most self-expressed version of who you really are. If there's one thing I know for sure, it's that when you decide to go on this journey and rediscover you, you are going to need people around you who are going to encourage you to keep moving forward and keep choosing yourself. I have created a free community of women who are doing just that. It's called the Freed to Rediscover You group. It's over on Facebook. The link is in the show notes below this episode. I would love to see you there. I would love to support you on your journey to moving through self-abandonment and into full self-expression. My guest today is Sue Bowles, a Master Certified Life Coach, award-winning author, and national conference speaker who founded the My Step Ahead program, which empowers and encourages others to share their stories while they are healing. She's also the chief instigator behind the Dare to Believe movement, daring people to believe they matter. I was so inspired hearing Sue's story, and I know you will be too. Sue, welcome to the Free to Be You podcast. I'm so pumped to have you here to talk about what it is that you do. And I know that you're coming in from a different time zone to me. So it's super cool that you've made the time to chat with me today. And I would love it if you could introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing.
Sure. Well, thank you. And welcome to, hello, I should say, greetings from Ohio in the United States. Yes, I'm in a different time zone than you. But that's the joy of the internet. So, wow, who am I? I am someone who has had a lot of experiences in my life that aren't desirable. I have a lot of trauma in my life. But what's powerful is that through a lot of hard work, those events don't define me anymore. So when someone says, who are you? I am a conglomeration of a number of things. I have trauma and I have healing. I have all kinds of different things. What I do is I'm a Master Certified Life Coach. I'm a speaker. Obviously, I do a lot of stuff with podcasts. I have a book out. So I have a lot of things that I do, but those things are not who I am. Who I am is someone who has done the hard work of healing, and now is very passionate about helping others in their journey and helping them walk their road of healing so they can be everything that they should be and are designed to be, and have something holding them back. I also, one of my titles, if you want to call it that, is that of chief instigator. And what I mean by that is I am the chief instigator behind the Dare to Believe movement. And that is part of what my company, My Step Ahead, has launched. So it's great. Everything I do is under that umbrella because it's all about empowering other people to share their stories while they are still doing their healing journeys.
Oh, I love that. And I love that you said that it doesn't, like, what you do doesn't define you, because that's so true. It's so true. We do tend to step into these roles and become this version of ourselves because of what we do, but it isn't actually who we are. And one of the reasons you and I are chatting today is because of the passion that you have behind what you do. But most importantly, you are somebody who has done the work. You're somebody who's stepped through that transformation and on the other side wanted to give back, which I love. Not that that doesn't mean that everybody that goes on a transformation has to step into giving back and doing the same for others, but that's what you found yourself doing. But I love that you've done that hard work. And the Dare to Believe movement is so inspiring. I definitely want to hear more about this because it's not just a company name or it's just fun to say you actually are living and breathing example of this.
Yeah, the Dare to Believe movement, we just launched it in November of 2022. So it's still a groundswell, and it's exciting to watch the momentum that's coming with it. It just excites me, as you can tell. I usually am not speechless, and now I'm fumbling for words because I am so excited about this. Because I'll try to slow down and back up a little bit. When I say chief instigator, that seems to be the perfect title. It sounds a lot more fun than founder or originator or whatever. Those are boring titles, An instigator stirs things up. They like to help other people have a little bit of fun, or help other people embrace something or get involved in something. And I mentioned I'm a life coach. I'm a master certified life coach. I speak at a lot of conferences and college campuses. And in my speaking with people in my seminars, or speaking at a campus, or in my own clients, or just casual conversation, where this all started was I started hearing a shadow of doubt, a hint of doubt. I would share my story and encourage and empower and give people a couple of tangible steps they could take. And people would come up afterwards and say, well, but you don't know what happened to me. You don't know what my life has been like. It's already too late for me. And they've already disqualified themselves because in their mind, in their judgment, it's too much. Too much has happened. They're too screwed up, too far gone, whatever you want to say. I'm a Christ follower. And back in just 2014, I called myself the holy exception. This is before I did my hard work. So I've only been on my healing journey in earnest for 9 years. But I called myself the holy exception because of everything that had happened to me in my story. Just briefly, I'm a childhood rape survivor. I was raped by a classmate when I was 7 years old. And I didn't tell anyone until I was 22, right before I graduated college. I'm in recovery from an eating disorder. There was other sexual abuse. I was raised in an alcoholic home. All kinds of stuff, all kinds of rejection, just all kinds of stuff. But when you have a trauma, it literally rewires your brain. It doesn't matter if it's a big trauma or a small trauma. Trauma will rewire your brain. So I was 7 years old and I didn't have a chance to be a kid. I didn't know what it was like just to be free to be me. I didn't have that chance to just be a happy-go-lucky girl that loved riding her bike. So when you go through middle school, which is already just a hotbed of stress and challenge, and then high school, and then college, all through my developmental life, I didn't have a chance to think right. So that's where my eating disorder developed, because I wasn't thinking right. And it just spiraled into so many different things. So by the time 2014 gets around, I'm finally dealing with the rape from over 4 decades ago for the first time. And I was tail spinning. And I came across this retreat based on, from a movie that had come out. And I went to this retreat because I was imploding and I was desperate. I took a chance on love. I risked that I was lovable because I didn't believe it, but someone else was trying to tell me that. But I went into this thing calling myself the holy exception, believing I was too screwed up, too far gone, and a total waste of space. So fast forward there to 2023. And you can just catch a glimpse of what I've had to trudge through to get to this point. So that's why I like instigator, because it stirs stuff up. But it's good stuff we're trying to stir up in people. We're stirring up for them what is buried inside that they know is there, but they don't know how to get it out. So as chief instigator of the Dare to Believe movement, I am here to dare people to believe that they matter, because that was what I have become convinced of in these conversations with people, is that when they have that shadow of doubt, they're really wondering, do I matter? And when you strip it down, until that question, do I believe that I matter? Not that somebody else say I matter, not I'm supposed to matter, but what do I believe about myself? Do I believe that I matter? And until that question is answered in the affirmative, in a rock solid bedrock way, I am convinced that permanent life change cannot and will not happen. So we launched the Dare to Believe movement to stir the waters across the world. And we are reaching across the world already, that you matter and you have a purpose. And I don't want to say it doesn't matter what happened to you, because I will never downplay a life experience. Some people say meaningful life experience. Every life experience is meaningful. I will never downplay that. I will say that what happened to you was not your fault. And it does not have to control you anymore. And that is what the Dare to Believe movement is all about, is helping people take that next step. So we have stuff on the website. I'm sure we'll talk more about this.
Yeah.
But we're digging into, just bit by bit, we're digging into, what does it mean to dare? When I dare you, Megan, if I'm daring you, I'm seeing something in you that you may not see in yourself yet. And I'm challenging you to take that risk and step outside of your comfort zone and see what happens. Knowing that you may not believe in yourself, but somebody else is cheering you on. So, I'm going to dare to believe that they see something. I'm going to dare to believe that they see something I don't see. So let me take that risk and see what happens on the other side. So it's just a fun thing. We're digging into fear. We're digging into imposter syndrome. We're digging into self-talk and boundaries and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Helping people start addressing the things that are holding them back to help them take their next step.
I love that. Oh, so much there I want to dig into. Powerful.
I might have a passion about it.
But yeah, I think, you know what? You're right. If we don't have the courage to take a look at what's there, then we're never going to be able to answer that question. And I think that's one of the things that you and I definitely connected over in our conversation leading into this, is I believe that we need to have the courage to look at our past, unwrap it, we unpack it, we get it all out, which takes a lot of courage. And then we just repack the parts that serve us moving forward, or we reframe the parts that don't serve us in a way that do. And so that bag, when we repack it, that backpack that we all carry on our back with all this stuff that happened to us, it becomes lighter. It becomes a lot lighter. And suddenly those things have a different meaning. The things that we've been through have a different meaning, and they become the value that we get. And I mean, it's exactly what you're doing, right? You've gone through that journey and you've repacked your backpack. It's much lighter, but what's in there is all these amazing tools and values and strengths that you can now serve other people with in your movement. So I love that. I love that. And we definitely are 100% on the same page there. You mentioned a minute ago the self-doubt. So I wanted to dig into that a little bit. Did you find that you had that yourself? You had your own self-doubt, obviously, from what you've been through. Like, what was the first step that you took to kind of step over that and start doing that work? What made you step into it?
Great question. I was desperate. I was desperate enough to take the chance. And what I mean by that, and I'm getting a little emotional.
Yeah.
When that happens, I won't say, please forgive me. I'll say, please understand, because this is still part of my story. Back in 2005, I lost a very dear friend. 2008, I was grieving her like yesterday. Now, I had a long period of time, number of years, where my eating was fine. Everything seemed like it was great. I was out of counseling, the whole deal. And when it got to the point that I was still grieving my friend like it was yesterday, 3 years later, my eating disorder red flags were coming up. My pastor helped connect me with a counselor. I'm still with this woman today. And that is just fantastic. But what is interesting, her name's Amanda. And what is interesting is that when I first started talking with Amanda, the rape came out within the second session. And she's like, Sue, this is huge. Have you ever dealt with it with somebody, worked it through with anybody? And I looked at her and said, I wouldn't know what it would look like to say I did. So I guess that's your answer. That was 2008. We spent 6 years getting me stronger in the present before we could start considering digging into the past. And that's a very critical point, because I think some people think they're going to go to a counselor or a therapist. Oh, I got to go digging into this and I'm not ready to. That's fine. You don't have to be ready to dig into and lay all the cards on the table right away, because sometimes just like I said, we have to be stronger in the present. And I didn't know what a boundary was. I would let people manipulate me and walk all over me, and I would seethe internally because I didn't stand up for myself. So I had to figure this stuff out. Now, at the same time, yes, my eating disorder was raging, so we had to deal with that too. So there was a lot of present stuff. But what drove me to take that step was I was desperate enough. I saw the red flags of my eating disorder starting to come up. I didn't know what I was walking into. And about a few sessions in, I asked Amanda, I said, what do you think it is? Why do you think it's starting to come up now? Because I'm thinking I'm just there to deal with my eating disorder, even though I hadn't called it that at this point in time. And she said, I think it's just a bunch of unresolved issues. So we got to work. And because I had been in and out of counseling so many years, I quickly looked at her and said, if we're going to do this, we're not stopping until we're done, because I am not doing this again. And there's those little shreds of desperation, because if I was starting to get on this cycle of I'm okay for a while, so I'll get out of counseling, and then something else happens and it tailspins. And it's like, it might be longer in between, but I'm still not getting where I want to go. So the initial phone call to reach out to Amanda was because I was starting to see something happen to me that I didn't like. And the thing is, eating disorders are shrouded in secrecy. So nobody knew what I was struggling with. I didn't even call it an eating disorder. I called it odd eating behaviors or anorexic tendencies. It wasn't until 2016 that I finally owned it as an eating disorder. And that gets into some of the, and we'll get into a little bit about some of the steps you got to take about owning your story and stuff. But I was desperate enough. And it's the same thing that drove me to that retreat in 2014, because I was imploding. And I didn't know how long I was going to be able to hold on. I was desperate enough that I took a chance on love.
Very
Even
powerful.
when I didn't believe I was lovable, I took the chance in spite of that. And it paid off.
So brave. So brave. And, it's true. We are our worst critics. And that seething that you talked about a minute ago,
Mm-hmm.
was that for yourself or for the person who were you not putting a boundary in place with? Where was that aimed at?
I was angry that it was happening. So I was angry about that, but it had been such a standard for so long that you kind of get used to it. What I was angry about is that I was letting it happen. I was angry I wasn't standing up to myself, and that I was letting this person walk over me, that I didn't know how to stand up, because yes, I doubted that my voice was worthy of being heard. I doubted, can I confront this person without having World War III? All those things. What it boiled down to is I didn't think I mattered. One of the feeders to everything as it has transpired is that when I was in with Amanda, my favorite answer for the first 6 months or whatever was, it doesn't matter. We be getting into something, I'm starting to say something, it doesn't matter. And I kind of shut it off and shut it down. And every time, she and I have a fantastic relationship. We talk about this, we joke about it now. But I look, and a few weeks ago, I mentioned it to her, but she looked at me and said, what you're saying, Sue, is that you don't matter. And I hated every single time she said it, because she was right.
That's where that came from, right?
And when I look at it now, yes.
Yeah.
Because that's the crux of it, is that, yes, I had self-doubt. And that self-doubt was because I didn't think I mattered, because I wasn't given a chance to have a voice. So then I had to fight one, to find a voice, and then two, for the courage to use that voice.
Yes, 100%. And I feel like we get angry, but that anger gets directed, generally, from what I've seen with my own clients, is that anger gets directed at us. It definitely was the case for me. And so that self-loathing that just feeds that story that we don't matter, we don't matter, we don't matter. And then we start being more of what we're not, and we start expressing ourselves less, and then all because we don't have enough belief in our ability to just be ourselves. We don't like ourselves. We're not going to want to be ourselves. So yeah, I feel like that was a really powerful point that you made there. And so you stepped into that work and you found Amanda. She sounds Amanda. We love Amanda. We still love Amanda.
Yes,
and
we
we've
do.
all had one of those Amandas in our lives. I know
I met
definitely
with her
have.
again yesterday. So
Amazing. I have a few of those, and they know who they are if they're listening. You need that person, don't you, sometimes, like just to tip you over the edge and take your hand and hold you. And it's about having that held space. And sometimes we don't have that necessarily. So I love that you were able to find that in her.
And sometimes, if I could real quick, sometimes it's to keep you from going over the edge. That's the other end of it. And that's the angle, the direction I was going. I was heading towards the edge again. And as I learn more I've learned so much about myself in the last 10 years, but when I knew I had anger issues growing up, but what I didn't realize was that I wasn't dealing with it directly. So a moment ago, you talked about when we have that self-doubt and we start expressing ourselves less. And at the same time, sometimes we express ourselves to the extreme where we don't have that regulation. We don't have that balance. For me, when I was in high school, I had such anger issues. I worked at a fast food restaurant. So I was in and out of the walk-in all the time, getting stuff out. I would take my hand and I would punch the boxes. I didn't have anger issues at all, not at all. But that was one way that it came out to the extreme. Now, if you take that further and further and further, some kind of substance abuse, some kind of self-harm, any of those types of things are generally tied to some type of self-loathing, anger turned inward, depression, which is again some stuff turned inward, etc. And all of those are negative expressions because we feel we don't matter.
Totally. And you mean they're not the real us, right? They're not. We've abandoned our true nature to deal with what's happening. Right. And we start being, like you say, extreme in the opposite direction of what's true and the opposite direction of, like you said, love. And it all comes from just this, dealing with this thing that you can't speak.
Very much so. And like I said before, I didn't speak my first truth for 15 years. It was a few months before I graduated college and then ended up coming out to my dean of students. My family didn't know. Some of my family didn't know until I wrote my book. And that was 2019. Wow. So, and it's been interesting because as I have been more vocal about things and as I've started to do more of the public appearances and the podcasts and the this and that and everything, I'm not lost that part of my story is also that of my siblings. So in the acknowledgments in my book, I thank them because in some ways I'm sharing some of their story. And, they have been nothing but supportive and cheerleaders. But I didn't realize that until I was writing a book. I'm like, when I talk about the situation at home this one day, that kind of affected my 4 siblings there too. Oops, but at the same time, that was part of what wasn't spoken about. And yet now I have seen other siblings get stronger in who they are, reach out for help if they feel they need it, or see it with my nieces or my other relatives or whatever. And it's like the power, the ripple effect of one person saying it stops here. It's okay to talk about it. The secrets end now.
Oh, that's so freeing as well. I mean, you must feel more and more and more and more free, the more you share your story and the more impact you have and the more people step up, like you say, and speak out. That's the ultimate freedom and being able to show up in a world where you can make a difference.
If you had told me in 2014 that I'd be doing what I'm doing now, I would laugh you off the face of the earth because I didn't matter in my mind. I didn't know what God had in store for me. And it truthfully blows me away. When I first started the podcasting in 2020, Mom had passed in October 2020. I had been doing podcast guesting a little before then, earlier that year. And I went to this retreat that I'm part of that has really helped in my healing. And I was talking with a friend. And as we were talking, I said, Beth, it's just me. And she said, and later, no, but did you hear that word just? That is the great disqualifier. And I was in essence saying to her, I'm nobody special. What, and here you're hearing all these hints. Well, later I found out my book won second place at a book festival. This is my first book, self-published, and won second place nonfiction. I'm like, okay, I think I might be onto something. I might be doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Beth found out about it. I had the books on the table for everybody. She came over, took a book and said, "This isn't just."
I love that.
And we joke about it now, but it was so true that when my niece says, when you use the word just, you're doing yourself an injustice. So yes, if you had told me years ago I'd be doing this, I would laugh you off the face of the earth. And even 3 years ago, I was kind of like, there's nothing special. And there's a difference between humility and discounting yourself. And I was discounting myself. I pray I don't become prideful about anything that's going on. That's not what it's about. It's not about me. It's about empowering others to start facing their story and helping them take the next step. That is my purpose in life. So it is very freeing as I see more things happen. It blows me away that I get to do this. But at the same time, for the longest time, Megan, I was hacked off at God. I'm like, why did you let this happen to me? If you love me, why'd you let this do that? And why any of the things that I have gone through is a lot for one life. And all of it came my way. And I'm like, why? And what's interesting is now, as I have done the hard work of healing, that mind shift change has come where now I see it allows me to relate to so many people that I will never fully understand another's story because it's not my story. It's their story. But I can certainly relate to a large portion of stories in one way or the other to better understand how I can help speak to that person's life and situation for that one moment in time that I'm blessed to be in their presence.
Oh, that's so true. I love what you said back there. I get to do this work. That's such a powerful thing. I had a mentor.
It's fun.
I had a mentor who was a big Texan man. We used to call him the big Texan teddy bear. And he gave the best hugs, by the way. But he used to say that. He used to talk about that a lot. I get to be a dad. I get to be in this, it's like a blessing, like the gratitude that comes out of saying it that way is so powerful. And you're right. You would relate to a lot of people, relate to so many people, and not everyone is necessarily ready to jump in, like we said before. But when you hear somebody else's story and you see that they've done it and you see that they walked that path, it gives other people courage. That's where the word encourage comes from, right? It gives other people courage to step into that first step, like you said, like one step at a time. And I think that's a good segue into one of the other things that I really wanted to dive into with you, which is owning your story. So what did that look like for you when you started to own your story and you started to move through? Obviously, we talked about what the start of it, but that middle bit, that messy middle, I like to call it.
Oh, man, was it messy? Oh, my gosh, it was messy and still gets messy once in a while. Where it started, honestly, was at that first retreat in 2014. And just briefly, there was a movie that came out called Ragamuffin. It's based on the life of the late Christian musician Rich Mullins. I don't know if your listeners have heard Awesome God or Step by Step, they've heard Rich Mullins music. And that movie talked about some different themes. It was a hard watch for the first 20 minutes, really hard, because it spoke so strongly to me. And later that year, they wanted to do a retreat to continue the themes, talking about themes. And one of those was taking off your masks and forgiveness and relationships. And that whole part about taking off your mask was what really hit me, because I've been living a lie for a long, long time. And I got tired in the eating disorder of trying to remember what I said to who about what I ate. And I just got tired of it. So I went to this retreat, and through a series of things at that retreat, like I said, I was desperate enough. I was imploding when I went there. I was desperate. And what happened was that my brother had served 18 months in prison. And when he got out, he saw somebody in town. And he said, to his friend, said, well, where are you? I haven't seen you for a while. Well, I've been in prison. In my judgment, if anyone had a reason to be shamed or be ashamed of their story, it was my brother. And here he was being authentic. And that convicted me like crazy. And I went to Amanda and told her the story. And I said, I just want to be authentic. Get me ready. And we spent 6 weeks in that mess, dealing with my fear and my anxiety and everything. So when I got there, I was as prepared as I could be to figure out what it means to start taking down a mask. Because again, I didn't think I mattered. I experienced love and acceptance like I had never experienced it before. Not for anything that I did, but simply that I was God's kid and that I was there. One of the staff members, who's a dear friend now, she's actually the person that got me into life coaching, later told me that she kind of said that the retreat was kind of like a Hail Mary for me of, was I lovable and could God's kids love me? So that messy middle started there. And that first step was, yes, I had to own my story, because I was in denial about my story and I hated my story. And that led, just when I finally owned it, and it was just a whole series of things, I broke down. And I mean, like, I was hard crying for like 10 minutes. And because I had been open with people and told people what I was going through, 50 people in the room that I'd never met before, I'd met them 24 hours prior, kind of knew what was going on, because this retreat opens up a room on Facebook where just people of the retreat get in there. And this first year, we were all strangers, and they asked us to share our story. I shared my story in that group for the first time, as the first time I ever shared my story publicly. So then to own it, it kind of gets into some of the other stuff we want to talk about. From there, owning it, I had to come face to face with the fact that, yes, I was raped, and that I couldn't just kind of blow it off. But it's one thing to say it intellectually. It's another to start allowing the emotional side to connect to it. So that's part of what owning my story was about, was taking out the intellect and saying, crap, what happened in my life? And how is this affecting me? And how am I going to handle it now? And then I had to grieve my story. Every story on earth has something to be grieved. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be as much as losing a job, to losing a parent, to losing a limb, to anything else in between. Everything. Mm-hmm. There is loss in every life, and every loss is worthy of being grieved. So I had a lot of loss in my story that I had not grieved. So the second year, I had to let myself just grieve it, and that meant feeling all the mess. And that was really hard. So then the third year is where things started to shift. And that's where I started realizing that I have value. And there's a lot in between there. But that mess is hard. And healing is not for the faint of heart.
Really isn't.
You talked earlier about having a support system. Amanda was right there with me. And we dug in like you would not believe. And that catapulted us. But yeah, it's messy in the middle in a big way.
Totally. And you said a key word in there that I believe stops people from moving through that mess, and that's shame. Shame is so debilitating. It's paralyzing, because you have to feel it to be on the other side of it. So that means you've got to almost relive, like you said, the emotion, or or at least have the emotions for the first time in your case. But for a lot of people, you've got to go back there and you've got to relive what happened and feel the emotions and really move through that shame. And I think that's where having someone like Amanda or like yourself or even me now, someone that can hold that container of that safe space. So you had that group and you had those people that were holding you in that middle part, in that shame, so you could move through it. I love that. And I think that's one of the things that people do when they're stuck is they hide because they don't want anyone to see that.
Right. Brene Brown has a wonderful quote.
I love her. She
very clearly spells out the delineation between guilt and shame. And that is one of the missing links. Because even when what you just said, Megan, about we go back and we have to feel the shame. The delineation, she says, is guilt is what I have done. Shame is who I believe I am. Owning our story, yes, is going to involve guilt. Shame is what other people put on us, and we buy the lie. So part of, and my friend Kathy from the retreat says we have to get the story straight. And that is part of getting the story straight. I am not shameful. I have done things that are wrong, and therefore I feel guilt over that. But I am not ashamed that I am human. See how it goes? Every human person does something that isn't right. I don't know a perfect human walking the earth. So therefore, we've all done something wrong. But I don't have to be ashamed for being human. I need to take ownership of it and do what I need to do to correct it, but not let that define me as someone that I am. Who I am is human. That's where it should end.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, right? That's why it's debilitating, is because we take it on. We own that shame as our own and make it a part of us. And then we hide from it. Yeah. It's horrible.
We don't have people who are willing to love us enough to put the relationship on the line. We don't have someone speaking truth to us because we're hiding, because we have bought the lie that I should be ashamed. I am no longer ashamed of what my story is, because some of the stuff that happened in my story was not my fault. That alone is a huge step to work through. It's part of that messy middle. And trust me, when Amanda and I were dealing with the rape, it got really messy in a really big way. But I'm on the other side. I'm not ashamed of my story, because that part of my story was not my fault. Getting to that point to be able to say that and believe that was a journey in and of itself. But we have to have people who speak into our lives. One or two people. My friend Sprinkle again, Kathy, says all of us are recovering jerks. And if we don't have 2 or 3 people in our lives who will tell us when our jerk is showing, we are too lonely. We all need to have 2 or 3 people that we give open license. Say, you know what? If you see me going off the rails, I need you to pull me back.
Yes.
You, I will listen to. The ones over on the mountain screaming at me, no, because they haven't earned the right to be heard. We all need that in our lives. Doesn't happen overnight either. But yeah, we hide. And that's one of the things we lose out on when we hide.
Yeah, absolutely. And we all have that inner voice as well, that inner critic that is just so can be so nasty when we're in that shame. I know Brene calls it, and I've kind of taken it on, that shame storm, where she talks about a shame storm. When you're in one of those and you're like, it's stormy and it's dark and it's
I'm the worst person to walk the face of the earth. Yeah.
Right. And there's that critic on your shoulder going, you are that. And you shouldn't be, doing what you're doing. You should be hiding. You should be,
we're shooting all over ourselves.
Shooting all over ourselves. And so that voice also needs to be drowned out. And the only way we can drown that out is by turning up our own, the real truth, the real version of us.
And that again starts when we believe that we matter, and then we start believing that we have a voice and that voice deserves to be heard. See, this is why the Dare to Believe movement is so critical, because no matter where you are in the field, it comes back to that question. Do I believe that I matter? In this situation, when I got shame screaming in my ear and guilt going off the rails, and I need to figure out which end is up, and I don't know, do I believe that I have a voice that I can maybe tell somebody, hey, I'm struggling with this. Can you help me sort this out? And that could be coffee with a friend. Or do I believe that I matter enough that I'm going to tell Shane to take a hike? It all comes back to, how do I answer the question, do I believe that I matter? Because I don't think we understand how powerful that is and how many different ways it influences every little thing.
Yeah, it really does. And so you've started this movement in November, which I love. It sounds like you've started it a long time ago, to be honest, but now you're actually
it went public in November. We'll put it that way.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, exactly. So I love that, and it is a real mindset shift, and I think that I love the birthing of that for you as well, where you were, that came out of your own journey, your own healing journey. Realizing that for yourself. So I love that mindset shift. So what would you say to somebody listening? So if you're listening, Sue, what would you say if they are resonating with what you've talked about so far, and they've realized that actually I need to do something? And I know it's going to depend on where they are in the journey, of course, but what would you say the first thing they could do after hanging up from here would be? What would it be to reach out to a friend? Like, what would be the first step you would suggest?
Great question. And yes, it depends on the situation. If someone is in a crisis, then you reach out to the crisis centers. So it just depends on the situation. Having said that, if it was you and me talking, okay, and I get off and I'm realizing, man, I need to do something. I mean, yeah, I'm going to think about it, but I'm not going to think about it so much that I talk myself out of something, because if I'm feeling it now, then I need to act now. And it might be this is like a first step of believing that you matter enough that you can do this and that someone's going to respond. Yes, maybe text or even better, call a friend. It's easy to hide behind a phone. It's really easy to have a conversation via text when someone can't see my face, and I can write a word that has nothing to do with how I really feel. So I would even encourage you, if you be really bold about it, pick up the phone. The first step, yes, is reach out, invite someone in, because we haven't gotten to this place of being stuck without having someone else involved. And what I mean by that is, let me rephrase that. We've gotten to the place of being stuck because we have not let other people be involved. Because we have hidden, because we're wearing a mask, because we're so concerned about what's someone else going to think. When we ask the question, or we say, but what's someone else going to think? Or I'm afraid of someone else's opinion. Translate back. You're saying you don't matter. And I mean that with all sincerity. I'm not just playing games. Because when we start worrying about what someone else is going to think about my desire to find healing for my life, because I am finally dissatisfied enough that I'm willing to do whatever it takes. When I'm starting to get the gumption that I might matter, even though I don't use those words yet, but I'm not willing to keep living the way I am. If I'm more concerned about somebody else's opinion than me doing what I need to do for me, I'm saying I don't matter. And sometimes the most daring thing you can do, especially when you don't feel it, is do it anyway. One of the things we talk about on the Dare to Believe movement website is our daring journeys, and about when someone dares you to do something, they're challenging you to do something outside of your comfort zone. So to the listener right now, whose heart might be pounding, or you might be sweating or shaking, you're like, all right, this is hitting a little close, and I'm really uncomfortable because I know but. Cut off the but and make it I know and. I know, and I'm going to do something now. And I will go so far as to say, if you don't have anybody you feel you can trust, if you don't know where to reach out, I would be honored and privileged if you would reach out to me. We'll give the contact information at the end of the show.
Yeah.
I would be honored to be welcomed into your world, even if just for a split minute, because you do matter. And I'm not just blowing smoke. I don't know your situation, but I have been desperate. And one of the mantras that I have used with Amanda, and even talked about it a few weeks ago, was a manageable level of tolerable existence is no longer an option. And I want to say that again so your listener catches it, because I think it's going to speak to somebody, because it's where we get stuck, is a manageable level of tolerable existence is no longer an option.
So powerful. I love that. And you've got a PDF that you were going to offer as well.
Yes.
There's the first 4 steps to healing. So
Yes.
we'll pop the link in there, because that could be a good first step as well.
Yes.
Is just to actually read through some of those steps and decide which one or all of them is the best for you.
It's just daretobelievemovement.com. And it's right there. You'll get it in your email right away. And it talks about the first 4 steps. It doesn't matter what the healing needs to happen from. The first 4 steps are pretty much the same. And we've alluded to a few of them here. I don't want to give everything away, but there's also a number of different reflective questions on that. So that if you're not sure how to go about things, you're not ready to pick up the phone yet, but you want a safe step, that is your next safe step. And then that'll have some reflective questions you can go through with each of the 4 steps to kind of figure out, okay, where am I? And again, my contact is right there as well. daretobelievemovement.com. Everything is right there. The first 4 steps to healing, my email, number to text, the whole deal is everything right there.
Amazing. And I know that your story is so rich that there's, a lot of people that could relate to that. And sometimes that's what we need as well, is to connect with someone who has been where you have been. Yeah, because my story is different. And that's one of the things I love about this medium and the podcast and this collaborative experience that we get to have, is that we're all aiming at the same thing. We all want the same vision for the world, which is for people to feel like they matter, for people to feel that they can be free to be them. And that is going to be an individual journey, and finding that right person to take that journey with, be that someone in your space or someone in mine, is so important. And it's critical, because it could be the difference between you doing something or doing nothing. Right.
The circumstances of your life do not have to disqualify you from living anymore.
I feel like I could just mic drop, we're done.
I could talk about this forever, but
oh no, it's so true. And thank you for your brave share as well. And thank you for stepping into being you and showing up in the world and making a difference, one person at a time, although it sounds like this movement's way many people at a time, which is awesome. And I just want to say to you listening, it's not a dress rehearsal. I like to say that on every show. You don't get another go at this life in this body, right? So it's up to us. It's up to us to step into being our true self, uncovering what that is, and doing the brave work that's involved to make that happen. So if you resonated with the conversation that I've had and her story, I'd love for you to let us know. And also, if you think that somebody else could do with hearing this, I've already thought of 2 people I want to share this with specifically in my space. This because I know they're going to love what you've said, or at least it's going to bring up what they need to hear. If you are feeling that way as well, I would love you to share it with those people in your life. And Sue, again, thank you for being on the show, and thank you for being you.
Thanks for having me, Megan. Being free to be me is a wonderful place to be. So thank you.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.